I'm concerned that free speech is already dead, frankly, in universities. You've got a load of sopping wet lefties with bright pink hair and a rainbow flag on them, and they don't let anyone else have an opinion anywhere.
I think the problem, actually, there have always been students who want to shut people down, but that's not so much the problem. I think the problem is really university leaders and university administrators who are not probably doing their job. And their job should be that when there's protest, you say, fine, you can have a protest, but you're not stopping someone from speaking, and the speech and the talk goes ahead. So what was so good about the bill until this recent event was that it created the right incentives for university leaders that they couldn't let these things be shut down. Because then they risk being sued. Now that may not happen.
But I'm just concerned that no matter what legislation, or indeed lack of legislation, either one of those might be preferable to the other one, I suppose, depending on which way you read it, but it could be a concern regardless, which is that universities, no matter what the law is, they just decide to no platform someone because it's not worth the hassle on Twitter. Regardless of whether or not there's actually a law in place, they might just go, anyone can get cancelled these days just because of a couple of mean tweets.
Yeah, I suppose it depends what you think the incentives are. If there are strong financial incentives, if they're going to lose, millions of pounds in the courts, then I think that is a big incentive, and that could help. Nothing's going to be perfect, and the bill by itself wouldn't be the ultimate solution. There've got to be cultural solutions as well. But I think it will create the right sort of incentives. That's why it's especially disappointing that we're losing the statutory tort, or rather, we're losing the kind of statutory tort that the bill would have put in place prior to these amendments.
But now then, is there a fine line here when it comes to freedom of speech? Because I don't think anyone has a right to not be offended. I don't want to live in a world where people aren't offended and that there's some kind of law against that. But where is the line when it comes to freedom of speech? Kanye West, for example, I will obviously not repeat what everyone I'm sure has seen him say about a particular former leader of Germany. I would argue that there shouldn't be any problem with banning that stuff, but it's a fine line, isn't it?
Yeah, I think one useful way to draw the line is between restrictions on content and regulation of what they call time, place and manner. So there are ways in which you can express ideas, for instance, that are obviously harassing and abusive, creating an intolerant atmosphere. Those things are already against the law. But when it comes to an idea, perhaps there should be, only a very limited range of ideas that just can't be discussed at all, because pretty much any idea, I think, should be open for discussion in the right manner, which means in a civil and courteous manner. So we already have laws which restrict, for instance, certain kinds of speech, but it's not the place of the university, I think, to restrict speech more than the law already does.
Now, I can't help but notice you are obviously a professor of philosophy at the University of Cambridge. You've got a brain the size of a planet, and I want to delve into your infinite pool of wisdom here, because it relates to a lot of the things that I regularly talk about here on this show, a lot of the topics that I regularly cover, where I can't help but feel as though we're being asked to suspend logic, rationality, things we can see before our eyes, and discussions about trans issues and what is a man and what is a woman, and things that we can see taking place, cultural changes in the country, things that we can see taking place in the Channel, for example. And there appears to me to be an ever-increasing number of people, especially young people, who are willing now to just suspend logic. Are you seeing that in universities? Is there something in that? It's almost Orwellian, isn't it?
I think one thing I'm seeing that's really striking in universities for students and staff and academics is the number of people I've spoken to who feel like you, who've been in seminars or classes where they just think everyone else has gone crazy because everyone else is completely certain about something, that you can't say this, we can't say that, or, about J.K. Rowling or whatever the issue is. And inside, they're thinking, how can this be? I don't understand it. But they're not going to say it because they're afraid to say it, and often with very good reason. So I kind of think it's not as though the entire student body has gone mad. That's not right. I think there's a small minority of students who are intent on shutting down everyone else because they don't agree with free discussion. They don't understand the value of it. But actually, the number of people who actually believe that, who have that ideology, is smaller than you would think, even in universities.
Well, that's reassuring in a way. One thing I find especially annoying as well is a lot of these kids who are rabble-rousing, I would say, about this, will probably grow out of it one day, own a house at some point, somewhere rural, predominantly probably, quite a lovely leafy area, and end up voting Tory, and we'll never get an apology out of them.